What's up, everybody? It's the Power Rankings Podcast, aka the Power Rankings Show. I'm your host, Elliot Harrison, and I'm pleased to be joined by someone who thinks my argument sucks.
Not everyone, just a couple of them.
Marcus Mosher, Marcus underscore Mosher. Yes, so Marcus thinks my opinions about Tiger Woods are no bueno, so I won't bore you guys all to tears with my curmudgeon Carl take on Tiger playing. I know a lot of people are paying attention to that. I still don't quite understand the Phil Mickelson saga completely. Someone will have to educate me on that. I did read on it. It was very confusing to me. So Phil Mickelson is confusing to me. What's on your football mind today, Marcus?
Oh, on my football mind, I'm glad you clarified it because I got Tiger on one of the screens right here. So during the podcast, if I don't like one of your arguments, I'll just kind of slowly start to look the other way.
Well, if your mind's on Tiger, that's fine. We're going to bring in Chad Ryder in a little while. We're going to have plenty of football on this podcast. We're actually doing something really cool today. So Chad, who comes on every Thursday, former and current colleague, Chad Ryder, is doing a mock draft with Marcus. They're going to alternate picks. I'm going to comment here and there when I think they really screwed up. Just kidding. But we're going to be doing a mock draft first round today, all 32 teams. Then we're going to go to second round next week and hopefully the third round the week after that. So this is a pretty monster thing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but the sports world is definitely eyeing Tiger Woods. Marcus, what are your thoughts on Tiger Woods and what's happening today?
I'm glad he's back. He's one of my favorite athletes ever. I truly did not think I'd ever get to watch him play golf again, let alone play at the Masters. And he's playing pretty well as of this recording. So I'm having a great Thursday, Elliot. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome. Tiger Woods is not one of my favorite athletes of the century.
Quincy Carter, okay. Darren Hambrick, Tiger Woods.
Yeah. All right. Sweet. But that's not really true because everyone who knows you knows that Woody Dantzler has a very special place in your heart that really no one could fill,
Yeah, the little two hop that he did on the sideline against the 49ers and that kick return. Best kick return you'll ever see.
I could do a whole podcast on Marcus's favorite 5 spare Cowboys. Yeah. It would be a
so
great
mean
time.
To call them spares, but yeah, Kenyon and Rambo. Big fan.
Yeah. Okay, let's a little trivia. Who was the Cowboy who caught the almost winning touchdown in San Francisco in overtime in 2011?
Oh, 2011. Almost won? I'm trying to Jesse Hawley. I was trying to
think of the game. Right.
Yeah,
who won the what was the name of that reality show?
Playmakers.
Playmakers. Thank you. Yeah. I knew you would get that. I knew you would.
Do you remember the final two that were in there? It was Jesse Hawley who won the show. And it was Andrew Hawkins, who played forever for the Bengals.
Andrew Hawkins, that's right. Andrew Hawkins worked at NFL Network, actually. Okay,
got a great podcast now.
Yeah, really. I'm looking at how white I look. My gosh, like my neck, dude. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe I should close the blinds a little bit. See, that's better, isn't it? See, I don't look so white if I do that, huh?
By the way,
what if I just do the whole podcast holding them like this? So yeah, man. So let's do our mock draft. Okay, you guys ready? Cool.
I got a new sponsor for the show. So if you're wondering why my face looks oily, it's because I just put a bunch of Vicks Vapor Rub on it to try to open up the nasal passages. So Vicks Vapor Rub makes you smell like an old person.
That's you always talk about we're off to a fast start, and like this is terrible. I mean, this is literally this has got to be one of the all-time worst starts for a podcast ever.
I think it's great. It's doing well.
Yeah. Any football thoughts before we get to the mock draft? Not really.
I mean, unless you want
Carl.
No, I mean we got more stuff coming up about the Brian Flores lawsuit. I don't know if we want to touch on that. Maybe we can save that for tomorrow. But that's very depressing.
Yeah, I know. I already ruined our podcast the other day talking about Dan Snyder. I'm going to not be curmudgeon Carl out on her podcast today. Offline, I will give you my real thoughts about golf and fans, but not online. There we go. Okay.
Let's mock draft, baby. I want to do it.
Let's mock draft. So here's the deal. So obviously Chad is, and if you haven't listened to us before, Chad has been covering the NFL draft for quite some time, and I worked with him at NFL.com. He helped me prepare for the draft because I'm like a lot of you out there that's like, yeah, the draft is interesting, but I don't get super heavy into it. So when I had to prepare for it, Chad actually helped me multiple times with that. And anyway, he's a great follow on Twitter. He's at Chad_Reuter. That's Reuter. Let's go ahead and bring him in right now. And he and Marcus, I suggested to Chad the other night, how are you, sir? There you are. Yep. Doing all right?
I'm doing fine.
All right. So I'm going to brag on you for a second, kind of. So I called Chad. Now, normally, if you know Marcus and I, a lot of what Marcus and I have done on this podcast is just free flowing. We don't sit there and talk about everything we're going to do. We just do it. But with Chad, I call him and say, hey, man, what are you doing? Chad's usually laying in bed telling me he's tired and that he's going to go to bed. And it's like 8:15. Yeah.
8:45, maybe.
With some warm milk, a warm cup of milk. But, we hashed out the idea of maybe doing a mock draft over the next couple of weeks with Marcus. And I called Marcus, excitedly to tell Marcus, hey, I think this is a really cool thing. If you guys do like 3 rounds, Marcus and Chad had already built a spreadsheet and we're already on round 3. Like I'm literally calling Marcus to ask him what he thinks about doing it. And they're already on the 3rd round with it's probably a color coded spreadsheet. I was so disgusted. I didn't even want to look at it,
I mean, there was nothing better in the morning than waking up to an email from Chad like, hey, join my Google Docs to do this mock draft. And I was like, oh, yes, this is great.
Yes. So if you can imagine.
By the way, I said, hey, do you want to talk to Elliot first about this before we do this? Marcus is like, no, let's do it.
No,
let's go.
No, Marcus doesn't. Marcus.
Right, let's go.
Marcus is so past the point of respecting me. It's like, not even, let's not even go there. But here's the funny thing. I'm going to the doctor and I'm on the phone with Marcus and Marcus goes, oh man, there's nothing better than waking up in the morning and you expect something's going to come like Folgers coffee or catching McDonald's breakfast before it's 10:30 or whatever the cutoff time is. No, it's nothing better, man, than mock drafting at 9 a.m. with a Google Doc. Yeah. That's what I think. Do I want a warm cinnamon roll or do I want a mock draft with Chad Reuter?
I think the original line in Apocalypse Now is, I love the smell of mock drafts in the morning. I think that was the original line. So
yeah, something like
just
that.
Going with that. Yeah.
Marcus, just tell me what Apocalypse Now is.
I know the reference that Chad made, so I gotcha.
I'll be honest. I never saw Apocalypse Now, all of it, Chad. Surprisingly, I've seen most of the classic movies. Would that come out like 79, something like that?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good talk.
It's worth doing some slightly illegal activities and then watching it. It's worth that experience. Yeah.
All right. Now that we're 12 minutes in, let's get to this mock draft.
Yes.
So, Chad, you're drafting first, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm going with Tyler Smith from Tulsa.
No.
We had a little talk about him before that. Aiden Hutchinson going to the Jaguars, not a surprise. A solid player. They could use him on that front right now, and just kind of a low floor guy that's really going to be productive for you.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
I mean, right off the bat, I was going to do like a little drum roll or something. You just,
no, we're going right into this.
Let's go right into it. Okay, so pass rusher for the Jags. I like it. I think it's a good pick. Makes sense. Let's go to the Lions. Now, when y'all did this last time, Chad was picking number 2. He took Malik Willis. Now it's your turn to pick for the Lions. Marcus, what do you got?
Staying with that pick, Malik Willis. I think this is way too high for him, but I can see the upside for Detroit. You get a developmental quarterback behind Jared Goff. You have 2 other high picks, one late in the first round and another at the top of the second round. I think this is where we're heading.
Chad, do you like this pick? Of course you do, because you made it yourself.
Well, I made it myself, and I've had him at the top of the draft for a long time because, you could take Travon Walker, you could take some of these other guys, but if you want to change the fortunes of a franchise that hasn't won a playoff game in 30 years, no, we're not talking about the Cowboys. We're talking about the Lions.
That was uncalled for.
If you want to change the fortune of the franchise, you get a playmaker like this guy, and I think they're going to excel with him. and the days of Wayne Fontes will return, and they will get back into the playoffs.
I mean, Marcus, that was a shot across the bow.
That's all right.
Right there.
I'm going to make fun of his next pick, so go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, next pick, Ike Ekwonu going to the Houston Texans. Play him anywhere you want. He's a big man. He's going to dominate at the point of attack. I think the Texans will try to trade out of this pick, to be honest with you. But if they're there, they need an offensive line really badly, and they get a dominating player right where they need him.
I don't really get this one, though, honestly, Chad, because they've got their tackles in Larry Tunsil and Titus Howard. Are you really going to take a guard at number 3? I think they'd be better off going edge rusher here. I get the appeal to Ekwonu. I just don't think this is where they're going to go. But
Titus Howard should have never been a first-round pick. They should play him at guard. They shouldn't play him at tackle. You stick Icky there for sure. I'm good with them getting a better 5.
That's okay. So we can go to pick number 4 because this is the guy that the Texans should have drafted at number 3. It's Travon Walker. This is Travon Walker. You just don't get guys that are this big and this athletic very often. 272 pounds, ran a 4.51 40-yard dash. The production's not there yet, but you're hearing a lot of whispers around the league that this might just be the best player in the entire class. You pair him with Quentin Williams and Carl Lawson and Sheldon Richardson. I think Walker's going to be a star in the NFL.
My gosh, that's flying at that size, guys. 4.51. Yeah. That's flying.
Yeah, no, I don't have any issues with that. I wouldn't have any issues if the Texans took him either. But again, there's some risk involved with him, and we've talked about this before. Very, very can be risky to take a guy that high without the proven production. But again, like we said, in Georgia's scheme, he wasn't asked to do a lot of the things that he's going to be asked to do at the NFL, and he'll improve in some of these areas using his hands, et cetera. And you just hope that he can, he can become what his potential is.
Well, I tell you, so far, I mean, I guess it's hard to say what's a stunning pick or not, but I'm still kind of stuck on Malik Willis all the way at the top of the draft. I mean,
it's high. It's really high for him. I'm not arguing it.
Talking about a number 2 pick overall, but so far these other picks make sense. And I'm not saying that one doesn't make sense. I just think so far of these top 5 picks, that's the most surprising. But let's round out the top 5 here. We got the New Orleans Saints on the clock. What are you doing, Chad?
There's a trade here, and the Saints are packaging the 2 picks that they get from the Eagles, and they're coming up for Matt Corral from Ole Miss. They're getting a quarterback, whether it's Corral or Pickett. They're coming up, and they're going to get their guy. Jameis Winston's a 1-year guy, bridge guy, wasn't healthy last year. They're going to get their guy. And if they gave up a bunch of future capital to not move up and get a quarterback, I have some questions. I saw the name here at the bottom. Marcus, were you expecting Matt Corral to go this high? Because we've talked about quarterbacks on this podcast. I didn't think you were that high on this particular player.
No, I'm not. I think Malik Willis is a huge reach at 2, but this is a far bigger one for me. I don't see a first-round quarterback because he comes from a very RPO-heavy offense. He's not a big quarterback. There's some, maturity concerns. I don't think you need to trade up to get Matt Corral if you're the Saints, but if they are afraid that the Panthers are going to draft him, I guess I get it, but it feels a round too high for me.
Or the Seahawks. The Seahawks are going to be interested in him as well. So
what's the biggest concern? What's the number 1? What do you circle? Is it the maturity? Is it the height? What's the biggest?
For me, it's just the RPO kind of gimmicky offense, right? For him, it was one read and run. And we've seen a lot of those quarterbacks struggle early on in the NFL. Even Zach Wilson, who I think came from a more complex offense at BYU, really struggled. And he's not very careful with the ball. I just don't see it, Elliot.
Okay. Well, let's get to the next pick. It's not linger on the Saints.
I'm glad that we're disagreeing on this podcast. It would be no fun if we just agreed on every pick, right?
Well,
Well, look, I'm the only one in the country that's had these guys in the top 11 for the past, 2 months, and that's fine.
Okay.
But people also didn't think Patrick Mahomes was going to be a very good quarterback either. Nobody put him in their first round mock drafts in March. Fair people enough. Had him in the 20s in their rankings. And so we don't, guys mature when they're in college and when they get into the pros. these guys have a lot of growing to do, and they have a lot of talent. So I'm good. I'm good backing them with guys that could really lift a franchise if you give them a chance.
All right. So our next pick here at number 6 is the third quarterback off the board. It's Kenny Pickett. Matt Rule recruited him at Temple before he left for Baylor. Their owner, David Tepper, is a Pittsburgh alum. They've talked about how they might have to reach for a quarterback in this draft. Matt Rule's got to get the quarterback position right. I don't love the pick. I don't love the fit, but it seems like this is where we're going.
It seems like to me, you didn't want Matt Rule to have his hands on a rookie quarterback. Chad, would that concern you at all?
No, Kenny Pickett's, well, he's only 23, but he's played a lot of football. And so I think he's fine. They'll be fine. It's not like Matt Rule has never coached a good offense in his life. He certainly has at Baylor. I mean, he's not a terrible coach, but like the production has to be there on the field this year. And if they want a guy who's experienced, and if they can't get Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, I think that's one thing they would love to do too when he gets healthy. So if they don't pick a quarterback here, we know that that's the way they're going to go. But if that can't happen, then, you know, they need somebody. It's not Sam Darnold. He's made that perfectly clear that it's not Sam Darnold.
Yeah. I'm just surprised that Marcus putting a quarterback in the hands of Matt Rule. It's something you didn't want.
I don't like this. I don't like this pick, but I think this is where we're going.
All right. Giants at number 7. What's going on?
Evan Neal, left tackle from Alabama, or the right tackle in this case, probably for the Giants. You know, some people play him at guard. He has experience there too. Wherever you put him, get him on the front line, get him blocking some folks, protecting Daniel Jones, making room for Saquon, who I think is due for a bounce back year, and you get Evan up front and just moving people.
Be a home run pick for the Giants. If Neal falls to 7, I can't think of a better possible pick for them. Love it.
Yeah, the Giants fell to 7 last year, so it's very similar to that.
Giants have to get offensive line help. They just absolutely have to. Okay, Atlanta Falcons on the clock. Marcus, what are you doing?
Yeah, Kayvon Thibodeau, the defensive end from Oregon. The Falcons defense was so bad last year. They need somebody that can rush the passer. I still think he's incredibly talented. I think he could go number 2 in this draft. I don't buy some of the concerns that other people have. I think he's a star. Put him in Atlanta and just let him go get the quarterback.
Yeah, if they don't take one of the top receivers, then it's got to be a pass rusher if Tibble is available.
Okay, well then, Chad, you are on the clock now at 9th overall. This team is really screwy to me, but go ahead.
I'm going to go Jets. They might be looking at one of these cornerbacks, either Stingley or Sauce Gardner. I went with Sauce Gardner this time around. 9th pick. He's very similar to like a Patrick Surtain, Stephon Gilmore type pick. Both, you know, went in the 9-10 area. So I think the value makes sense there. If they like his height and his aggressive play, you know, they need to get better out there on the edge. So this is the area of the draft where he should go.
Seahawks always love those long athletic cornerbacks. And this is just the perfect guy to come in and to do that, to replace Richard Sherman, who they haven't had for a couple of years, right? They need somebody like this. Gardner might be the best player in this draft.
We've talked a lot on this podcast. That's why I said this about Seattle and Carolina. I just don't know what the plan is in Seattle. They're off season. I mean, we did the top 32 signings, or the best signing for all 32 teams. And if you could have seen the consternation on Marcus's face trying to pick out when it came to the Seahawks and Cowboys, he's like, what do I do here? What move do I point out? So, okay, now the Jets are on the clock. Marcus, that means you're on the clock. What are they doing?
Yeah, so they took Travon Walker at number 4. Love that fit. Now they go to the offensive side. They get a receiver. They get Drake London, 6'4", 220 pounds. I think his game is very similar to like Michael Thomas. I love Elijah Moore in the slot, but you need somebody on the outside that can win in press coverage situations. I think London with Zach Wilson makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and Braxton Berrios. We're not forgetting about Braxton. I was given a hard time about that last time, so I want to make sure to bring up Honey Nut Berrios. It makes all the sense in the world for the Jets to take him.
Okay, yeah, you did leave out Braxton Berrios, and I know you think he's a potential Hall of Famer. Let's go Washington Commanders now on the clock. Chad, a lot of issues for this team, but people do think they're going to compete with Carson Wentz. Where's the first place you go in the draft for them?
Well, I think Drake London off the board, they're looking at Garrett Wilson, maybe from Ohio State, as we talked about before on this podcast. Get another Ohio State guy to come in with Terry McLaurin on that offense, and you got to do something if you're going to play with Carson Wentz. You got to have as many receivers as you can get that can make plays. So if they like Garrett Wilson there, and if they don't want to take a chance on Jameson Williams and want to see where he's at physically, you take Wilson and you hope that he can become a real playmaker.
They love Ohio State receivers there in Washington.
Say,
so it makes a lot of sense.
Didn't Curtis Samuel go to Ohio State?
So did Terry McLaurin.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. All right. Minnesota Vikings, they made a couple moves in free agency that weren't bad. Zadarius Smith, pass rusher, but there's still not a lot of trust in Kirk Cousins. So do you help Kirk Cousins out here, or do you fortify the defense, Marcus?
I think you've got to go to the defensive side of the ball. And this is one of my favorite fits of the entire draft. It's Derek Stingley, the cornerback from LSU. One of the most talented players in this class, but there's some concerns about his maturity and whether he's an alpha or not. Talked to a couple of people at LSU. They said he needs to have a big brother in the NFL his first couple of years. I can't imagine a better situation than putting him with Patrick Peterson, another former LSU cornerback, kind of letting him grow in that scheme. I think Stingley with Cam Dantzler, with Patrick Peterson would be phenomenal.
Yeah, I've got a top 2 picks for each team article coming out next week, NFL.com, and I'm putting Stingley for exactly the reason you were just talking about, him and Peterson working together to improve that secondary in Minnesota. Makes a lot of sense.
I think you guys have been watching too many dating videos on YouTube about talking about betas and the trouble that they have versus the alpha. This whole alpha versus beta thing.
I'm gamma, man. I'm way down the list. I'm totally
all right. So, all right. Let's you know who else is way down the list? Here's your cruddy segue of the week. The Houston Texans, maybe the worst team in the league, potentially. What do they do, Chad? Where do they start?
Well, I think you start big, right? And you can't get any bigger than Jordan Davis. And you put him in the middle of your line. Look, Lovie Smith wants to run a 4-3. Maybe Jordan Davis isn't the best fit for that. But you know what? I don't care. Just get him in there. If you go multiple fronts, you can move him all over the place, between the guards. If you tell him to attack a gap, he can do that, even though he's 340 pounds. He's a really good player. Really good players shouldn't last until 13, but it happens sometimes. So you go get the best player on the board and just hope he blocks out the sun and the quarterback can't see over him and all that jazz.
Yeah, Nick Caserio, the GM there, was with New England when they drafted Vince Wilfork, right? Vince Wilfork also played for Houston. I'm not making picks based on Lovie Smith because he's not going to be there very long. So just grab the best player. I love Jordan Davis there. It's not because he's old. He's going to get fired is what I'm trying to say, Elliot.
Right.
All right. So Zadarius Smith, I talked about just being a smart signing for Minnesota. Baltimore had him. It looked like, Marcus. They lost him. Do they try to replace him in the draft here, or the potential of him, or they go somewhere else?
Yeah, I looked at potentially grabbing an edge rusher here, but I'm going back to the offensive line. Ronnie Stanley's coming off a pretty serious knee injury. They signed Morgan Moses to a 1-year deal. He's a little bit older. They do have a prove-it deal. They have a prove-it deal. You grab somebody like Trevor Penning from Northern Iowa, who is a mean right tackle or left tackle in college. It's probably a right tackle in the NFL. Has all the athleticism you want. I think this is a great way to ensure that Lamar Jackson stays healthy. I love Penning to Baltimore here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Him or Charles Cross, if you believe that Cross can make that move over to right tackle. But Penning, brings real attitude, and I think the Ravens appreciate that. That's one of the reasons they took Orlando Brown in the third round.
He's an AFC North player, right?
Yeah.
Penning. He's just got that nastiness to him.
Yeah, so I'm not as high on him, overall as many people, but in this particular case, can't fault him for filling that need and bolstering their line.
Well, I wonder if Cross is going to go to one of your next couple of teams here, guys. But Chad, you're on the clock for Pittsburgh. They did get an offensive lineman in free agency, formerly the Chicago Bears. But do they go back to the offensive line again?
No, they trade up. They trade up and they get Desmond Ridder, their quarterback that they've been checking out. They've been all over these quarterbacks all through the year and, through the process. And Ridder is going to go in the middle of the first round somewhere. I think he's honestly like if they had a first round grade on Mason Rudolph, which Kevin Colbert has admitted to in the past, they got to love Desmond Ritter because he's Mason Rudolph as a passer, but he's actually more athletic. He actually has some athleticism to him, and he can make plays with his feet as well. So I think he's a guy that Mitch Trubisky can start off the year if they want him to, but I think Ritter is just as talented as Trubisky was coming out of North Carolina. So I think that's Kevin Colbert does not want to leave this franchise and not leave them in as good a shape as they can at the quarterback position. And I think they like a guy like Ritter.
Yeah, I think Ritter in Pittsburgh could do a lot of the same things that like Alex Smith did with the Chiefs. And I know some people are going to take that the wrong way, but I think Ritter can just keep you, afloat. It can keep you competitive, and he can use his legs on third down to get you first downs. I think Ritter in Pittsburgh is actually a really good fit for both parties.
This is interesting hearing you guys talk before. I thought this might be more of a last pick of the first round type guy, where a team trades in to get a quarterback, kind of like Minnesota did that, right? With Seattle to get Teddy Bridgewater back in 2014. By the way, the guard I was talking about was James Daniels. And if you love guard talk, let me tell you, Marcus has a guard fetish. Make sure you listen to our Tuesday podcast. Okay, New York Giants got offensive line help with their last pick. Did they go right back to the well and fortify it, Marcus?
Yeah, so Chad has the Giants trading back from 4, grabbing this pick here at 16. They grabbed Evan Neal at 7. Now they need to address their edge rusher spot. Jermaine Johnson from Florida State, transferred from Georgia. He checks all the boxes in terms of athleticism, production. I think he's a better than average run defender. You instantly plug him in as your left defensive end along with Azeez Ojulari, and your defensive line looks pretty good heading into the season.
Yeah, I think Jermaine Johnson has done as much to increase Trevon Walker's stock as Walker has with his athleticism, because everybody saw how Johnson transferred out of Georgia to get more playing time. And he went off and had an amazing year, ACC Defensive Player of the Year, I believe. So to say, hey, maybe Walker will, make that kind of stuff too. Johnson's a good player. I know some people don't like him as much as others, but in the middle of the first round, get him. He's going to be a really solid pro for 10, 12 years. That's a really good pick.
Okay, very good. That's the first half of our first round. We're going to go to pick 17. By the way, I meant to say Chad's wearing the NFL black baseball hat, the same one Rob Lowe famously wore at the
I set you up for that one. I knew you would say that, so you're welcome. I'm also wearing Cheesehead TV stuff, so I'm going to give them a shout out with the Star Wars stuff on there. It's fantastic.
Stay on, almost there.
Almost there.
All right, Los Angeles Chargers. Yeah, really. I never understood why they didn't shoot all of them. That was always a weird scene to me, but I like it. Okay, Los Angeles Chargers. Marcus and I think they are poised, Chad, to really make a run this year, but they're in a tough division. What do you think they need to do? Because they did a lot in free agency.
There's always a surprise pick in the middle of the first round, and I think the Chargers are in for that this year. A lot of people think they're going to take a receiver. I think Zion Johnson, the guard from Boston College, is a really, really good player that people have slept on this whole year. And I think he's a mid-first round pick all day. And just like Elijah Vera Tucker, by the way, that the Jets traded up for to get, very similar. I think he's going to solidify that offensive line. They'll get a right tackle at some point in this draft as well, probably. But I think they like Trey Pipkins, even though some people made like, really, Trey Pipkins? But I think he flashed enough last year that they'll give him a chance at that right tackle spot. You plug in Zion Johnson, and you're good up front.
What you could also do is play Zion at left guard next to Rashawn Slater, and then kick out Matt Filer to right tackle.
That too.
I thought Filer was really good in, I think it was 2019 with Pittsburgh as a right tackle. I like this because he's an instant upgrade over what you had last year. And I think he's one of the better players in this class. Give Justin Herbert more time. I love it.
You're talking guards. You're talking Marcus's language. And yes, everyone, I was kidding about the Chargers getting a quarterback. Marcus, Philadelphia Eagles, do they have their quarterback? Do they do something surprising here at 18?
I think the trade tells you that they at least want to give Jalen Hurts one more year. Because now if Hurts doesn't take a step in 2022, you take those extra first-round picks and you package them up and go get a quarterback in next year's draft. But I think they're going to try to improve the defense. Trent McDuffie is the best cornerback left. His arms are really short, but his feet are incredible. And if you have him playing opposite of Darius Slay, you can even have McDuffie play in the slot if you need to. I think this is a good value here at pick 18.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how teams deal with his length because, as I've said before here, probably it's been 20 years since a guy with that length has been picked in the first round. But I think his talent, he deserves to be a top 25 pick at least. So yes, the Eagles like him here. I can't blame them.
So, Chad, the Giants lost one of their starting guards in free agency. You guys already had him taking an offensive lineman, and then Marcus picked a pass rusher for them. Do you go back to the offensive line here? They need the help.
Yeah, I think you can. I think Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame, is too good of a value to pass up here. Okay. I don't buy into, people – the positional value argument. I didn't understand why Derwin James lasted until 17. He's a really good player. And I think Kyle Hamilton's going to be a very, very good NFL player. He's so rangy. I don't care what his 40 time is. He carries a lot of ground. He's a very intelligent player, and he's going to make a lot of plays. So I think for that value at 19, get that guy, the leader in your secondary for the next 8 to 10 years. I think it's an easy pick for him.
Yeah, I think this is a fine pick. I think this is where he should be going. I think the top 5 talk is a little crazy for me personally, just because of the positional value. But at 19, sure, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, this isn't our first DB off the board. It is our first safety off the board, I'm pretty sure. Philadelphia Eagles are back on the clock at 20. They just picked at 18. What are you thinking, Marcus?
Yeah, I think they're going to be one of the first teams since the Lions to draft a receiver in the first round for the 3rd straight year. They need some speed. I really like Devontae Smith, but he's not really a home run hitter. Chris Olave from Ohio State is legitimate 4.3 speed, a fantastic route runner, somebody who can stretch the field. I think he's like the ideal number 2 receiver in the NFL. Now you put a ton of weapons around Jalen Hurts, and if he can't take a step forward this year, at least hey, we got to move on. We got to find somebody else. This makes the decision really easy for Philadelphia next year.
Yeah, and it's also, now they don't – I was going to say, if they still had their 3 first-round picks, I was looking into this. I'm like, no team has taken like 3 offensive or 3 defensive players in the first round in over 20 years. So they would probably end up using one of these for offense. But I think it's interesting. The Eagles could actually take Jameson Williams here because they don't necessarily have to have him week 1. They can afford to take a little bit of a chance on him and get the discount because of his injury. So that would be an interesting pick too. But if it's okay if I just move on, Elliot, to the next pick, because we've kind of given it away already when I talk about Jameson Williams. I have the Packers trading up from 28 to 21 to take Williams. And I think if they are okay with his progress in the rehab from the ACL, they'll say, look, he might not be ready week 1 exactly, but he'll be ready sometime in the middle of the year, and he'll be able to do his thing. I think that's not ideal for what they want. They would rather have a Chris Olave, but if he's not on the board, I don't know that you can pass up this value. And I don't think they can just sit and wait for 22. There's going to be a ton of teams in the end of the first round looking for receivers, Arizona, Dallas, et cetera, Kansas City. There's going to be some movement for receivers at this point in the draft. So I have them taking Williams.
Yeah. Go ahead, Elliot.
Oh, no, please. You first. Yours is more important.
No, I think we should just tie these next 2 picks together because they've got 21 and 22. I think after they grab the receiver, they go back to the offensive line. The offensive line was not good enough last year. David Bakhtiari is getting older. Jenkins had to play across that offensive line. You just grab the best offensive lineman left, and that's Charles Cross, who could very easily be a top 10 pick. You can play him at either spot. You can move Jenkins to guard if you need to. I just think this is a value pick for Green Bay.
Yeah, Jenkins would be a real band. I don't think they want to move him from guard. I really don't. I think they want to play him inside. So if they get a guy like Cross, Packer fans all over the country are having Derek Sherrod flashbacks right now out of Mississippi State. But I think Cross is a better player, and I think it would work out for him.
Well, one thing for sure is I thought Cross would go earlier as highly as you guys spoke of him in our earlier podcast. It seems pretty far down for him at 22. But I wanted to go back. You said in over 20 years since a team took 3 guys on the same side of the ball. Now, I'm not a draftnik, but would it have been the 2000 Jets that were the last team to take 3 guys on the same side of the ball in the first round?
I think it was the next year, and I don't have it in front of me, but if it was, no, I can't remember, but I think in 2001
Okay.
somebody else did it, and the Jets had four, picks in that draft in 2000. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, they also did it, but I think in 2001 somebody else did it, but it's escaping me right now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember. I know they drafted Sean Ellis. They drafted Chad Pennington. I think they drafted a defensive back.
John
Anyway,
Abraham was another
John
one.
Abraham, right? Pass rusher. And then I think later in that draft, they got Lavernius Coles, like in the 8th round, and he ended up being quite a contributor for them. But I was trying to think when you said that, I was like, oh gosh, who is that? Okay, so now we're going to go to Marcus.
St. Louis, but it was the Rams, by the way, in 2001.
Yes, thank you.
It was the Rams?
Damian Lewis, Ryan Pickett, and Adam Archuleta. Now I remember. Yep.
Very good. Very good. So I was wrong. I just tried. Hey, I tried.
No,
so
that was good. That's a good pull.
Well, here's another cruddy segue. Marcus tried all season for me to move the Cardinals up, and I kept sticking to it and saying they're not as good as you think they are. And they kind of proved it at the end of the year. But I think most people agree this is still at least a playoff team, if not a Super Bowl contender. They lost Chandler Jones. At 23, Chad, do you try to replace some pass rush production, or do you go elsewhere?
Yeah, I think if you George Karlaftis is a really good player. He could go in the middle of the first round. If he's available at 23, I think you have to take him. Just a solid Ryan Kerrigan, really solid football player. You're going to love having on your team. Full effort, good motor, good strength. He's just a really solid player, and the Cardinals could use him.
Just not a big George Karlaftis fan, but this feels like the right spot, right? I think he's a solid player, not a ton of upside, but late first, early second round, sure.
Well, another team that lost their pass rusher, or one of their pass rushers this year, is the Cowboys with Randy Gregory. They can play Micah Parsons there, but then that'll kind of eliminate their ability to move Micah Parsons around and get some great matchups. So, Marcus, do the Cowboys get a pass rusher to try to replace Randy Gregory, or is offensive line just too important? What are you going to do here?
I mean, I think offensive line's really important, but I'm not sure there's a guy there that it's worth drafting at 24. Mm-hmm. So instead they go with wide receiver, Treylon Burks. Did not have a great combine, ran a 4.55, which is a little bit disappointing. The vertical was not great. The shuttle drills were but you're getting somebody that's really dynamic with the football in his hands. And I think the Cowboys need to make the offense a little bit more Dak friendly. So getting somebody who you can throw screens to and have him take it 20, 25 yards is appealing.
Yeah, he's going to be coveted because, again, like we talked about, there's going to be competition for these receivers at the end of the first round. And this is going to be one of those deals where, a lot of Arizona could take him at 23. I mean, real easily. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes, even though, like you said, the combine isn't that good. When you watch him on the football field, he does some really nice things, physicality downfield and all that stuff. So he's got a chance to make it.
Just curious here, does the signing of James Washington make this pick possible because you've already got somebody that can kind of be a vertical presence in your offense?
Well, at least for the first couple of weeks, right? I mean, until Michael Gallup comes back. But yeah, I just think they need somebody else that has a little bit different skill set than CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. And this is somebody that you can do a lot of Deebo Samuel-like things with.
Right. They're not. Yeah. James Washington is pretty much only a vertical guy, in my opinion. And I think Burks has a more rounded skill set than that.
I was just wondering, if you didn't have James Washington there, do you need a speedster, style guy? But the Cowboys can go later in the draft and do that as well if they want to. So let's go off Dallas. Let's go to pick number 25. Chad, you are on the clock right now with the Buffalo Bills. They're trying to get to the Super Bowl. So a lot of times when a team's trying to get to a Super Bowl, it seems smarter to pick for need in this instance than picking the top guy on the board. Do you agree with that? Or would you?
Well, I actually pretty much went with the top guy on the board in this because Devin Lloyd from Utah. I'm not even disagreeing with your premise, but I'm just saying, like, look, Devin Lloyd is going to be picked before 25, but it's just the way these things fall sometimes. Guys, for example, Tremaine Edmonds falls to 16 a few years ago for Buffalo. Right here, they're like, oh, well, Devin Lloyd's a good football player. Let's take this guy. And, it's not like they couldn't use another linebacker, and he can do some different things. He can rush the passer. He's good in coverage. And so, look, Baltimore could look at him at 14. The Patriots, he would be a good Patriot pick at 21 if they stayed there. So I think he'll probably be gone before then. But Buffalo, the other nice thing about being an annual Super Bowl contender is you can sit back and let the board come to you and just pick a guy that you think is going to really help your team if it's this year, next year, and not worry about needs quite as much.
Yeah, this feels like the right spot for him, especially with, you're going to be going up against some really good tight ends in the AFC. I think Devin Lloyd has the size and the speed to match up with those guys. So at this range in the draft, I get it.
Speaking of tight end, that is a position that has been notoriously absent. Although, Marcus, I know you've been looking at day 3 tight ends like crazy. So I don't know. Maybe we'll sneak one in, man. Yeah, maybe we'll sneak one in the 3rd round mock here. But a team that could have used a tight end potentially in the draft were the Tennessee Titans. Instead, they did that in free agency. We talked about that on Tuesday's podcast. Marcus, what do you see here for them? Do they keep hitting the offensive side of the ball?
You're not an Anthony Firkser fan, Elliot?
You're not. That's why you like Austin Hooper so much.
It's just because you get an adult in the tight end room. I like Kenyon Green here, a guard from Texas A&M who actually played tackle pretty well against Alabama, but a guy that just is big, nasty, can move people off the line of scrimmage. You slot him right in at left guard. You have him playing next to Taylor Lewan, and let's go. Let's start running the ball down people's throats.
Yeah, I think Green is more of a 2nd round guy myself. I think he's a guard only and the next level, but we'll see. A lot of people like him in the 1st round. I think the Titans they've really been hitting the quarterbacks hard. And almost every year, a team that has a veteran quarterback picks another quarterback in the 1st round. Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, last year Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo. This is not just like a short-term trend. This is something people are looking to do to make sure that they have a quarterback when they find their next quarterback. And I think Sam Howell is on their minds here. So I'll be really interested to see if they make that pick and just blow everybody up and just make them wonder what's going on. Well, this is a possibility.
With Tampa Bay on the clock here, coming up here at 27, Chad, you are picking for them at 27.
Yep.
Would they consider taking a quarterback given their situation with Tom Brady, unless they believe in Blaine Gabbert, who's still young enough to play, obviously, but you're also in a window to win a championship now. So do you get a guy that literally can come in and contribute 25, 30 plays a game for you? Whatever
it's interesting. Often a team that has picked a quarterback in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round will do it again. At least one of them a year will do it again the next year. And if they don't like what they've seen out of Kyle Trask, it would be really interesting, even though they just picked him in the 2nd round, which they shouldn't have. But I think they'll go another direction here. I think you go edge rusher. You get younger on the defensive line. Drake Jackson from USC, criminally underrated player. He's gained some weight. They had him playing linebacker, a stand-up linebacker, get down to like 250 pounds. He should be 270 pounds or so. That's what he was at his pro day. He's going to be a really solid player. Yeah, they have Joe Tryon, but they need more depth. They need more more youth up front. So that could be a really good pick for him.
Yeah, Jason Pierre-Paul was awful last year. They need somebody else that can come in there and give them some juice off the edge. I think this makes sense.
Could New England be in the market for similar things here? Marcus, I think they could use some pass rush help, but they lost J.C. Jackson in free agency. I think the pass defense definitely needs to be addressed one way or the other, back end or front end. What are you doing at 28 for these guys?
Yeah, you nailed it. It's got to be a cornerback, right? Right now, their outside cornerbacks are Malcolm Butler, who has not played football in 2 years, 3 years. It's Jalen Mills. It's Justin Bethel. They need an outside cornerback really bad. And Andrew Booth is just too good of a value here at pick 28. He's had a core surgery over the last couple of weeks. If it wasn't for that, I think he could have been a top 20 pick. I would have maybe given him to the Eagles instead of Trent McDuffie. This is somebody who is just a really, really good football player and a steal at 28.
Yeah, he's going to be like the Tre'Davious White of this draft, where he gets picked late, and he's going to be he's tenacious. He's a lot of fun to watch. So I like this pick.
Well, about 500 picks ago, we had Seattle on the clock. I think you took a corner for Seattle, Chad. So now we're at 29. Is Seattle going to hit the secondary again? They could afford to. I know they've got a lot of money in their safety position. What do you think they're doing here?
If they're not able to get their quarterback early in the first round, I can see them. They have those 2 early second-round picks moving up into the first round to grab Sam Howell. So that's what I have them doing. If they don't trade for Mayfield, San Francisco's not trading him Garoppolo. So they really don't have much. They can't just leave it up to Drew Lock this year. So they go up and get Howell for a reasonable price, and they let him battle it out and see if one of these guys. And honestly, Sam Howell's game reminds me a lot of Russell Wilson in terms of their mobility, but not like awesome quickness. Overhead, he's got a high release point, even though he's short. Really good arm. I think he's got a chance to be a very good starter, and it wouldn't shock me if the Seahawks kind of, made the connection with Wilson.
I'm just not a Sam Howell guy, man. I just think he's a backup quarterback in the NFL, like maybe very similar to Case Keenum. I get it. I understand why Seattle might do it. I'm not a fan.
Oh, Chad, this is not but I don't appreciate the shot on Case Keenum there.
I mean, like you're looking at like a good backup.
Take his name out of your mouth. All right. So
look, Elliot, that's the same thing that they said about Russell Wilson when he came out of Wisconsin. He'll probably be a good backup. And, he's a little short. So look, I've heard it all before. It's fine. It's fine. If they want to roll with Geno Smith and Drew Lock, that's fine. But I'll take the guy who's a really good performer.
Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson comps already on the show today. We are starting off hot.
That's right.
All right. So pick number 30, the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, Marcus, the biggest story with them was losing Tyreek Hill. Do you think they need to react to that right here? Because you said with the wide receivers, people are going to try to get them at the end of the first round, or is there not a good enough guy on the board at this spot?
I don't love any of the options here, but we should also mention another need that they have, Elliot. Tyrann Mathieu is still a free agent right now, and it doesn't seem like they're all that interested in bringing him back. So why not draft Dax Hill, a cornerback / safety from Michigan who has experience playing in the slot? He's a really good tackler. He can play deep safety. He can play in the box. He creates just a bunch of plays. I think Dax Hill is better than the 30th player in the draft, and I think the Chiefs are getting a massive value here.
Yeah, and if they don't go that way, they could go Jalen Petrie as well. Very good nickel defender. Worth this pick as well. That would be great. The only receiver that I could see them taking is George Pickens from Georgia. He's coming off the injury. I don't know if they'll take him that high, but you know what? If he wasn't injured and if he was making plays for this team all year, we'd be talking about him top 20. So that could be – Kansas City is one of these teams that will take chances on guys like that. So I could see that happening in the late first round.
Well, it's interesting the way you described Dax Hill, Marcus. Kind of sounded like Byron Jones a little bit in what he's been able to do at the pro level. Cincinnati Bengals are picking 31st. Obviously, they're trying to get back to the Super Bowl, but I could see them trading out here to a desperate team trying to get in to night one of the draft. The obvious thing to me would be to hit the tight end spot, but you guys have both driven into me that no, this is not a tight end draft. So what's Cincinnati do here, Chad?
I have them taking Devontae Wyatt from Georgia, 3 technique pass rusher.
Okay.
Even if they re-sign Larry Ogunjobi, who knows when he's going to be ready to play if he's injured. So they could use the depth up front. Really good player, strong player. Seems like a natural fit to me.
I think this is your best pick so far, honestly. It just makes so much sense, right? Because everybody's mocking them in offensive linemen, right? Whether it's Tyler Linderbaum or Kenyon Green. But no, they've got other needs besides just the offensive line. And Wyatt, they love big school production. He has that going to Georgia. Maybe some people will compare him to Geno Atkins. He's a little bit bigger than that. But, yeah, you put him on that defense with DJ Reader and Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. I love this fit.
Given that you said he's a little bit bigger than Geno Atkins, is this like a Grady Jarrett type player?
Maybe he's even a little bit bigger than that, but just as explosive, if not more.
Got it. Okay. So this is the interesting one to me because we've got the Lions as the caboose pick here. And I'm rooting for the Lions this year. I want to see Dan Campbell do well. And they've already been on the board. You already took Malik Willis. So you've got your quarterback. What do you do with the last pick of the first round?
Now, I'm going to preface this by saying this is not what I would do, but more what I'm thinking they probably are going to do, or whispers that we're hearing. Nakobe Dean is the best linebacker on the board. Okay. But he's small. I think Detroit's going to want some more size and speed. So what about his teammate, Quay Walker from Georgia, another linebacker? Well, Walker's 6'4", 241 pounds, and ran a 4.52 at the NFL Combine. A little bit more underdeveloped than Dean, but you are getting a fantastic athlete with 5 years here on your rookie deal with the 5th-year option. I think Walker's going to get picked early, and I think Detroit is a good spot for him at 32.
Yeah, this wouldn't be the first time a 5'11" inside linebacker got passed over early in the draft because of his size, even though he's an outstanding player. Seems like almost every Nick Bolton was a great pick for the Chiefs, Levante David, blah, blah, down the line, right? And Quay Walker's a talented guy. Honestly, I have a hard time not seeing Quay Walker in a Seattle Seahawks uniform taking over for Bobby Wagner. I just think that would be like the most sensible pick ever. So I wouldn't be shocked if Seattle moved up to get him either if they handled their quarterback situation another way.
Marcus, did Dat Wynn go in the first?
No.
I didn't think so.
Fifth,
I didn't think so. I remember. I didn't think he went that far down, but I thought he was at least a day 2 pick when you talk about short inside linebackers. One question here, Chad, on Detroit, as we finish off our first round mock is Dan Campbell is one of the coaches at the Senior Bowl, right? His staff, would they be more inclined to take someone that they saw at the Senior Bowl here? Do you see that kind of bias when you're doing your work with the coaching staffs that were at the Senior Bowl?
It doesn't always happen as much as people think it does, but in this particular case, I think there's a good shot with Willis that if they like the way he interacted with his teammates and the way he worked in the classroom, things like that they had a front row seat for him. And Sam Howell, and I can't remember who the third quarterback on that team was, but maybe Bailey Zappi. Anyway, so they have a front row seat for them, and it may actually pay off for them. By the way, Dat was a 3rd round pick. I just looked it up.
Third round pick, so day 2. Okay, so Marcus, I want to ask you this. So as you look over you and Chad's first round mock here, what's the pick of Chad's that jumps off the page to you? Either you're shocked or you think it's just a perfect pick. What jumps off the page?
Yeah, for me, it's the Devonte Wyatt pick at number 31, just because Cincinnati's got to get better in the middle of their defensive line. They've got to get more pass rush there. I think Wyatt could easily go in the low 20s or maybe even higher than that. So if he falls to 31, I know people are going to wonder, why aren't they investing in their offensive line? It's because this is just too good of a player to pass up.
Well, plus, they signed Ted Karras. They got Alex. They've invested in their offensive line. They have Jackson Carman coming back. They've put the money into their offensive line. They'll pick guys later too.
Sure.
But like you said, if you have a first round value there, you take them. And I don't have anything negative to say about Marcus Mosher's picks because Marcus _Mosher knows what he's talking about. I wouldn't say a bad word about any of his selections.
Is there one that you love more than the others? Here we go.
No, I mean, the way that we laid it out, there are some guys that are going to go higher than what we projected. But this is why these exercises are fun, and this is why we enjoy doing them, because it shows you that things do not go the way that everybody expects them to. I've made a living out of that, of analyzing where people have gone wrong in the past when looking at things and saying, look, conventional wisdom is not right. It is not right in March. And let's think about what could be different than what people expect. And that's what makes these kind of things fun.
Well, I have one that jumped off the page to me. And Chad, I'd like you to back in this. I want to ask Marcus about first, but I'm curious if this thought process that I'm about to say comes up when you're doing like your mocks for NFL.com. I think at 20th overall, Marcus, you had the Eagles taking a wide receiver. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad pick, but given how much draft capital they've invested at that position, I believe they've invested a 2nd and 2 firsts over the last 3 years. They haven't gotten a lot of return. Let's be honest on it. Devontae Smith had a nice year. Did that go into your mind? And then Chad, does that ever go into your mind when you're doing a mock draft?
Not for me, because you got to get that position right. You got to make sure that you surround your quarterback with the right amount of talent. And they haven't done it so far. So continue to throw resources at it. Try to find speed. Try to find guys that can make Jalen Hurts a franchise quarterback. And if Olave's really good and Hurts is just missing him and he's not accurate enough, hey, at least it's not the playmakers and the players around Hurts that are causing him to fail.
Yeah, and economists call this sunk costs. Those decisions are in the past. You can't allow them to affect the decision you're making today. If the best player that you think has a chance to make your team better is another wide receiver, then you take them. A lot of people made fun of Matt Millen when they're with the Lions and picking receivers 3 years in a row. But I think the third receiver turned out to be pretty good. I think that was Calvin Johnson. And I think that turned out to be a pretty good pick, if I remember correctly. I think he was the third of that group. So Charles Rogers, Mike Williams, and then Calvin Johnson. So that worked out for him.
I think actually, if I recall, I think it was actually Charles Rogers, Roy Williams, Mike Williams, and then it was Calvin Johnson 2 years later. But
okay,
I get the point though, for sure. I was just thinking in terms of that, like if you compare them to Cincinnati's had a hard time developing offensive line. So what did they do? They went crazy. They went bananas during free agency and brought in offensive linemen, not bananas, but you know what I mean? They definitely fortified the position because they haven't been able to really get that done in the draft. So that's kind of what made me think of it. But that's enough of my take on this. As always, great job, guys. But I give Marcus_Mosher the last word on this podcast. So Marcus, what do you have?
We are 3 weeks away from the NFL draft, which officially means that we are in lying season now, right? You're going to hear 55 to 60 names mentioned as first round guys and players that are rising up boards and all that kind of stuff. It's a good time just to ignore a lot of the outside noise. Trust your player evaluations. Trust what you heard back in January and February, because a lot of this stuff that we're going to hear now over the next couple of weeks is just going to be nonsense.
I just see Chad nodding his head like,
yeah,
absolutely.
Well, you know what? I create a lot of the nonsense, so I agree. No, but the thing is that some of it's right and some of it's wrong, but there's no way for you to really know. So you just have to do your best thought of, hey, this makes sense to me. This guy might get picked higher than most people thought. Yeah, that makes sense to me based on what I saw in the data. So yeah, that makes sense. I'll roll with that one. Sometimes I see stuff I'm like, no, I don't believe that's going to happen, and you just kind of let that go by the wayside.
Of course. All right. He is at Chad_Ryder. You guys with your underscores, that's REUTER. And he is at Marcus_Mosher. He covers the Cowboys on Locked On Cowboys. He covers the Raiders for USA Today. Chad covers the NFL draft for NFL Network and NFL.com. And I am at Harrison NFL on Twitter. We really appreciate you guys sticking with us. We're going to do round 2 next week. Thank you to all the people at Brinks. Courtney, I know you blacked out your screen because you lost interest 20 minutes ago. Take care, everybody. It was a great pod, man. See y'all.